Well, I want to thank you guys for coming out to support the Bible study.
Of course.
Should be a very interesting one.
It's me out of the house. Get the fear out of the house.
Yay!
We're all looking at you for some reason.
I love you.
You're so cute, even when you're looking at it.
Yes. Yes, you are. All right. So the last Bible study, we covered the table of showbread, and we covered the incense altar, which represents prayer. So,
I'll just let you know if I see something in the corner of my eye.
so let me see. Let me.
Have anybody online?
No, but I'm recording it for Aurora, which is why I have it online. So. These are off. And so remember with already
I was gonna say,
yes?
if you just wanted to go over what we've already been over, we checked that. And hopefully the next thing. That's okay too.
It's okay. We'll do what we do and I can always catch up. I can always read again for the people. Say, what's this? So, yes, the table of showbread. And so if we think about this, so this is the east, and the entrance is over here. And so you're coming this way, and so the table of showbread is on one side. The incense is right in front of the Holy of Holies. And then what we're going to talk about now is the menorah. So the menorah, isn't it? It's supposed to be on the south side. The table of showbread is supposed to be on the north side, according to Exodus 26:35. So it's very specific, so that you know which.
It's kind of a side table that's still there, but on the ground. Or is that even specified?
Oh, careful,
It looks like this.
Okay.
Yes. So it has.
Waist.
Yep. Waist level. It has this little crown here around it, and it's supposed to have 12 loaves of bread, of unleavened bread. Yeah, they do, because it's unleavened. Yes. Right. And it has these little poles so they can carry it, because they're in the desert and they move it around. Right? So yes, one for each tribe. All right. So the menorah, or the lampstand, is talked about in Exodus chapter 25. So if you want to, you can go there. You have your Bible. If you don't, that's fine. I will read it as well. Or you can go on your phone, or I can let you use my Bible. Because I have my Bible here too, but I have the scriptures written and I can look on my computer. So it would be Exodus 25. Would you like to? Okay. Sure.
The lampstand section there.
Yes, the lampstand section, starting in verse. Yay. Starting in verse 31 is where the lampstand begins. And I can read it, or if someone else would like to read it, that's fine too.
You are to make a lampstand out of pure hammered gold. It is to be made of one piece at its base and shaft with ornamental cups. And it's, I don't know what that is. Calyx and petals.
Calyxes and petals.
6 branches are to extend from each side. 3 branches from the lampstand from one side and 3 branches of the lampstand from the other side. There are to be 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals on the first branch, and 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals on the next branch. It is to be this way for the 6 branches that extend from the lampstand. There are to be 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms on the lampstand shaft, along with the calyx and the petals. For the 6 branches that extend from the lampstand, the calyx must be under the first pair of branches from it, the calyx under the second pair of branches from it, and calyx under the third pair of branches from it. Their calyx and branches are to be of one piece. All of it is to be a single hammered piece of pure gold. Make 7 lamps on it. The lamps are to be set so they illuminate the area in the front of it. Its snuffers and fire pans must be of pure gold. The lampstand with all utensils is to be made from 75 pounds of pure gold. Be careful to make them according to the pattern that's shown on up.
Right. Very good.
That must weigh a lot.
Yes,
On one
yes,
piece.
yes.
I don't know, it's how they make it from pure gold without mixed with another metal and it not be soft.
Right,
Because gold is actually soft.
right.
I don't
Right.
know, probably
That
just
is-
drop the big rectangular block of it, yes.
Well, that actually, they're modern science. The question is about how do they make that out of one solid pure gold, because pure gold is malleable.
Right.
And even gold rings, they normally don't make it pure gold because
Well, they
it'll
make it
bend.
the same.
It'll bend, right? And our modern scientists don't know,
Probably.
right? But and Moses didn't know, and Moses said, I don't know how to do this, and he said, well, God said, I'm going to give that special knowledge to this guy. I forgot his name, but and he will know how to make that happen. Yep, it starts with a B.
I want to say the following, but I know it's not.
Beziel or something like that. So he was given special abilities to be able to make that. And yeah, it weighs about 75 pounds.
I'm guessing it probably just here's a 100+ pound chunk and just
Hammer it out.
shaped it. Well,
he hammered
to
it.
the point of,
He was supposed to hammer it out. Yes.
I mean, naturally it would have been a larger piece in order to pick the finished product.
Yes.
There was a scientist in the last century, I believe Nathaniel George Washington. I'm not saying that his first name. And he was a devout Christian and asked God for to give him wisdom on all things. And he's like, no, that's too much for you to handle. And so your mind wouldn't be able to actually hold it and stuff. And so he's like, well, give me something. And God's like, this is, of course, my phrasing. He's like, what about peanuts? And he found peanut butter wasn't in use yet, and he found 200 uses for peanuts.
Oh,
Yes, George Washington Carver.
Yeah, I knew there was George Washington.
Mhm.
I knew
Yep.
the first name was probably not right. For
Yes.
George Washington Carver.
Yes.
I know desert areas originally have gold deposits. So
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's gold.
considering it was towards the beginning, it probably was very untapped.
Well, and when the Israelites,
look.
beautiful, very beautiful. When the Israelites left Egypt, he had the Egyptians give them a bunch of gold and silver.
You want to sit right here, so if you want to show people, show me something, you
I mean,
don't
of
So-
course, deposits
say
weren't
something
originally
so
tapped
you don't talk
into,
over.
Mm-hmm.
very easily have that much.
Well, they definitely had that much because they made a whole golden calf out of gold. And in Numbers 8, he said Numbers 8, 1-4, it says, the Lord spoke to Moses, speak to Aaron and tell him, when you set up the lamps, The 7 lamps are to give light in front of the lampstand. So that Aaron did this. He set up the lamps to give light in the front of the lampstand, just as the Lord commanded Moses. This is the way the lampstand was made. It was a hammered work of gold, hammered from its base to its flower petals. The lampstand was made according to the pattern the Lord had shown Moses. So the pattern has, as we mentioned with the other things, the pattern has very specific things that it's meant to do. That pattern came from the Lord, and it mirrors the tabernacle mirrors what is in heaven. There is. We will get to that. Absolutely. All right. So, if you look here, this is, rather than the modern day where it's all curvy, they're like you were saying, if it's pure gold, that curve is not going to work. So that's why they think it was more straight, like this. And if you look, it's very interesting because, they were talking about 3 on this side, 3 on that side. Each of those has 3 petals, 3 petals. And the middle one, right? The middle one is different, right? The middle one had 4 petals. And so this was filled with olive oil, and it was supposed to be refilled with olive oil and the wicks trimmed every day. Now, if you think about this, right? So they had to do that, and the wicks themselves were made from the linen from the priest's garments, right? Because when the priests were doing all this, sacrificing or whatever, right? After a number of times, they would become soiled. So and torn and whatever, and the priest couldn't minister in something that wasn't clean and whole, right? If it had a tear in it, they had to discard it and get a new one. So they would take the torn and the bloodied, stained garments and use those for wicks in this lampstand. Now, I have a question for you. So if you think about this, and the lampstand's in there, and this is covered with 4 layers like this. What is the source of light?
That's the lampstand.
The lampstand. That's the only source of light. And if you notice, these are all covered in gold. The sides are wood, but they're all covered in gold. So think about that lamp in there shining off of the gold walls, right? So that would be very pretty. But that's why it's so important to keep that lamp constantly lit. Every day you have to go in, you have to trim the wicks, you have to fill up with oil every day. Now, here's an interesting thing. If you look at the 7-branch menorah, right? Where does 7 come from?
Obviously, maybe completion? Like, is it
Right. Well, think about Genesis 1. Genesis chapter 1, right? There's 7 days of creation, right? The very first sentence in the Hebrew in Genesis 1:1 has 7 words in it. And if you look, since there's 7, right? There's a word right in the middle. So the word in the middle, if you were to say that those 7 words represent the menorah, and the Jews do, they say that the menorah represents the lamp of God, and therefore, the 7 with the middle representing God or the servant branch. And so the middle there would be this right here, which is Aleph Tav. And if you know the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph Tav is the first letter and the last letter. So Aleph Tav is just like Alpha and Omega, which Jesus calls himself the Alpha and Omega. Right? So the middle word is the Aleph Tav, or the Alpha and Omega. And the middle branch is called the servant. The Jews call it the servant branch. But that represents Jesus, is that middle branch. And the middle branch has 4 petals. The number 4 represents creation. Jesus was at the beginning, in the beginning, and he was the Word, and by the Word all things were created. So all those things tie together in the menorah, which is kind of cool.
So the middle one had a petals because it represented God.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So here's some more 4s. So we talk about the 4 because it in the 7 branch menorah, right? The 4th one is the middle one, right? The 4th day is when the sun is created, when light is created. The middle one, the middle branch, is on the 4th day, right? In the trumpets, the 4th trumpet is darkness, God taking away his light. The 4th vial, fire, falls down on earth. What do you need for a menorah to light? Fire. Right? So there's another reference to fire. Right? And God has 7 feasts. The 4th one being the middle one, and the middle one is Pentecost. And what happened on Pentecost? The fire from heaven came down, right? And lit on the people, and God, they were filled with the Holy Spirit, right? So once again, it's the 4th one, Pentecost, fire, light. And then in the churches, Thyatira, which is the 4th church, talks about eyes of fire. So all those all revolve around knowing the menorah, the middle branch, which is the 4th one, relating to Jesus and pulling all these pieces in together. Jesus is related to all of this. It's related to the creation. He's related to the coming, tribulation. He's related to Pentecost. He's related to all this.
Like the 7 things for the creation.
7 years of tribulation, 7 churches at the beginning of Revelation. Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Yep.
What did you see in Thyatira?
And I'm kind of laying me on this like interesting places where I went to. Every place that was 2, starting at verse 12 and going through 23, and that distance right here.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple other neat things about this is, if you think about the middle branch and then how many other branches there are 6 other branches, 6 being man. So there's God in the middle, and then there's man on the 6 branches. And there are 4 cups, like I said, for the almond there. This is what an almond flower looks like. It has 5 petals, 5 being the number of grace. And of course, the middle is red, representing bloods, and the petals are white, representing purity. So there again, he could have picked any flower. He picked the flower that represented white purity, blood, red, and 5 meaning grace, representing Christ. Christ is pure. Christ shed his blood for grace. And that's what was used in the menorah. Now, a couple references to the almond.
So I was gonna look up.
Yes, there you go. The almond, Numbers 17:8. That's where Aaron, when Aaron, when Moses and Aaron were leading the people, and then the people were like, well, why are you leading us? Blah, blah, blah. Right? God did a miracle in that he said, okay, all the 12 tribes, everyone bring a staff representing leadership authority, right? Everyone is to bring their staffs and lay them there before the Lord. And then the next morning when they came back, Aaron's staff had budded, and not only budded, but it actually produced almonds. So it had almond blossoms and almonds on the staff, which is a miracle, of course. But it then again represents God's grace, God's authority. The interesting thing about the almond tree is the almond tree is often grown in dry places, so like desert-like places. And the almond tree is the first tree to blossom in the spring. So it's the first one that brings the signs of new life is the almond tree. Now, another interesting thing about the menorah, we had talked about the number 7 and how it's all wrapped up in the menorah. How many colors are there in the rainbow? 7. Except, of course, for the pride rainbow, which only has 6, which represents man, as opposed to 7, which represents God.
Wait, what? That get rid of indigo or something? Or?
Yeah, they got rid of.
Yeah, that'd be funny if
Yeah.
they got rid of purple. I think they did.
Yeah.
Purple is a real key color.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, but there are 7
I thought you
colors
found
in
this up
rainbow.
earlier as well.
Yay! So if you just pull my thing up to the top, then everyone can see. And I don't have to keep turning this around. Thank you. All right. So we talked about it's one piece. We talked about this. The middle one is the serpent branch. But if you count up all the little pieces that are supposed to be on the menorah, there are 66. Anyone know what that means? What's 66? You put it in
She
the
can look
text.
it up.
Huh? No, you just put it in a text earlier today. You should know. You did.
Wow.
66 books in the Bible.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And they're
Well, I think I did that one yesterday, didn't I?
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an interesting piece of information.
I actually
Oh, yeah,
read it
no,
twice.
When that kid broke on you, I broke.
Yes, that's because it's this computer and that computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, 66 actually is that idol worship.
Right. But 66 is the number.
With 6,000, the 6,000 and
Yeah.
600 are actually good. But
Yes.
66.
There's 66 books in the Bible. So we think about this, right? We think about the light, right? If we think about the outer court, that light comes from natural light, right? This inner court here, that light comes from the menorah, right? What about the very back? Yes. there's no light in there, except what? The glory. The glory is the only light in there. And when the priest, the high priest, after Moses's time, the high priest would go in there once a year on the Day of Atonement, and he would bring burning coals from the altar with incense from the burning coals from here, and then take some of the incense from the incense before he went into the Holy of Holies. So that's the only reason he was able to see anything at all, if the glory wasn't there. But I'm not going to go much more into that because the next two lessons, I'll just give you a taste for the next two lessons right now, because the next two lessons are going to, one, take all that we've learned and delve deep into how all this is a foreshadow of Jesus. I sort of mentioned it a little bit here and there, but it's going to tie it all together with how the whole thing represents Jesus. And then the following study after that is going to go into depth about how all of this represents the church and the Christian life, which is also very fascinating to look at, to see how all of that God foreshadowed or gave us an example of what it really means.
So it's gonna show you that you're supposed to be a leader and come up with a business plan.
I don't see any of that in here, no. I don't see any business plan in here. No.
I would have.
Yeah. So the Jews believe the menorah represents the tree of life from the garden, and also the burning bush that Moses saw as a representation of the menorah. Another interesting part about this, of course, is with the menorah, they didn't have electricity, so they used oil. And there's rules for that, of course. So Exodus 27 says that the Israelites were to bring pure oil from crushed olives for the light in order to keep the lamp burning continually. And this is where it talks about Aaron and his sons tending the lamp from evening until morning before the Lord. It's a permanent statute throughout all their generations. Now, if you look at the oil, the Jews were really particular about how this worked, and that the olives were supposed to be shaken off the tree, not picked off the tree. They had to shake the tree, and then the olives would fall off. And what they would do is there are four pressings for the olives. So the first press was supposed to be for the temple. So when you do the pressing, the very first press always went to the temple. The second press then was used for cooking, for human consumption. And then the third and fourth press, that was for when they put the oil on the animals, for medicinal purposes and stuff like that. And then the fourth was just generally used for burning normal, everyday people in their homes, right? Because it was a lesser quality. So I thought that was an interesting piece of information.
Does olive oil burn very long though?
Olive oil?
I mean, I'm looking at it now.
Yes. Well, Johan burns olive oil, don't you? Yes.
But I mean, for extended period of time. Oh, it won't hurt you.
Depends on how much oil you have, and you have to trim the wick, and that's why if you're trimming the wick, it'll burn for a while. Which is why it talks about they have to tend the menorah. They yes. Yes.
Sorry, I thought you were drinking too.
All right. I'm not going to go over this, but I thought it'd be interesting. There is a reference in Zechariah 4 to the lampstand. So if you're interested in looking that up later time, it talks about the lampstand and the two olive trees. It's all of Zechariah 4. Mhm.
How about sleep?
Okay.
That is a sleep.
And then, of course, as was mentioned, Revelation also talks about the lampstands. So there are 7 golden lampstands, and the Son of Man was among them. And the lampstands, of course, represent the 7 churches. And this reference talks about, remember then how far you have fallen, repent, and do the works you did at first. Otherwise, it will come and remove your lampstand from its place unless you repent. So it's talking about the importance of having your light shining and trimming your wicks and all that. And so we'll go a little bit more into that when we get into the final study there. Right, exactly. Have to be trimmed every day. Absolutely. Right, exactly. The flame would go out. So that they had to be cleaned and refilled every morning. It's interesting if you look at the Jewish tradition of how they cleaned it. The priests kept the 2 on the east burning, and then they cleaned the 5 on the west. And then obviously once they're done, they went and cleaned the 2 on the east. But if you look at Revelation, there were 2 good churches and 5 were rebuked, which is an interesting correlation. It's amazing how many things the Jews do that they have no idea relate to Christianity.
When you focus on rules, you lose relationship.
Right. Oh, very good. I like that. That's very, very true. All right. So that is the right. Right. So then the 5 would be relit, and then they'd clean the 2 on. Yeah. Yeah. That's my understanding. And typically they would always use the servant branch to light the other ones. And there is actually a tradition talking about the menorah, in that up until the time of Jesus' death, the middle branch never went out. Even when they were cleaning it and refilling it and stuff, that one never ever went out. But from the time of Jesus's death, so they didn't say that, but they said 40 years prior to the temple being destroyed, that middle one kept going out. Sort of, that goes along with the fact that the veil was torn and that the door to the temple kept opening by itself, even though typically it takes 3 to 4 men to open it. Those are all traditions in the Jewish lore, that all those things happened 40 years prior to the temple being destroyed. Right. So that is fascinating. And that is the menorah. So what does that leave? What's the one thing that we haven't covered yet? Of all the furniture, we have one we haven't talked about yet.
We also have talked about old 214 and everything.
OD 214.
Got a check mark on it. DD, OD.
DD 214.
Understood.
Yes.
Good.
You don't know what a DD. So you don't know what a DD 214 is? You'd like me to inform you?
Yes.
Okay. A DD 214 is what you're given when you leave the military.
Honorable discharge.
Yes. This is a military shirt.
I thought it was probably good.
Yes.
One of the garbage. I think if somebody put too much wood on that fire.
I know, right?
Somebody should put too much wood on that fire.
Yeah.
Looks like you lit it.
Funny.
They have a Maui issue there.
Uh-huh. Yes. Yes.
The Israelites several times when they had a Maui issue. Too soon.
All right. So we haven't talked about the ark.
That's what I said.
Yes.
You know what everybody else is talking.
Yes. The Ark of the Covenant.
That the asylum?
No. Not that ark.
Of that organ?
No.
Rats and stuff?
No, not that one. Nope.
The one in St. Louis?
No, that's art.
Is it what you find both sides?
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. We're getting in the breaker box.
McDonald's.
Golden Arches.
Yes. Yes. No, the Ark of the Covenant.
Which had the Jordana, Aaron's rod that budded the 10 commandments in one, I think.
Nope,
The
just
nuns.
those three.
Forget about
Yep.
the nuns.
No,
They're in every convent.
no.
The Ark of the Covenant, right?
Uh-huh.
At least for this, the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes. Right.
Which is are you talking about?
No, we're not talking about that. So in Exodus 25,
Sorry, I ended the conversation here.
they shall make an ark of acacia wood. We talked about acacia wood way back in the very beginning.
I think that's bad. My mic's still on.
Oh, good.
Not on. I don't know, but I'm thinking about a little on that. I started to be in that vacation. Everybody likes vacation.
Uh-huh. It shall be 2.5 cubits in length, a cubit and a half in breadth, and a cubit and a half in height. You shall overlay it with pure gold inside and outside, and you shall overlay it. You shall make it on it a molding of gold around it. You shall cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them on its 4 feet, 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other side. You shall make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. You shall put the poles into the rings on the side of the ark, carry them. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be taken from it. You shall put the ark into the ark, the testimony that I shall give you. So interesting that so the poles are supposed to stay in it. And you know, we all remember the Raiders of the Lost Ark with the way it sort of looked. Well, it may be the way it looked, but there's some disagreement as to whether the poles were. No, they were permanent. It just says in the Bible they were permanent, but they were whether they were that way or this way. Because there's
They stayed permanent in the park.
right.
The question was, what they do with it?
Sure. Well, that's possible question too. But the question is, which side of the ark were they on? Because it doesn't say. But there is some Jewish tradition that says that when the priests came up in the temple anyway, when the priests came up into the Holy of Holies, the poles from the ark were sticking out, which would mean that it would be, on the short side, not on the long side that the poles were.
I think there would be available two ribbons.
Is there instructions as to how the ark is to stick, last time it's done?
Yeah.
Um,
Was David did it wrong. Right?
well, David carried it wrong.
Oh, right, you did it right.
Yes, he carried it wrong. Well, that's a good question. I believe, I'd have to look for sure, but I believe the mercy seat was the angels were facing north and south, I believe, but I'd have to look to make sure that maybe that's,
Two bird side.
yes, that would face east.
Which way did the ark face?
I'm sure.
His kind of like do both sides things, but there is on some
Yeah, I would
make them
Give
feel
me a hard time.
Yes,
And there you're talking about the cabin.
yes,
102 feet index tomorrow.
yes. It's supposed to be really hot tomorrow. So the words for ark is interesting in that ark is alon, and it's aleph resh nun. So aleph representing God, resh meaning leader, and then nun meaning life. And it can mean a box, an ark, or a coffin. Coffin. Yes.
the death of it.
And then the ark, the ark is what held the 10 Commandments, right? Yeah. Right? And then the mercy seat is kaporet, which basically it just means to cover. So it's like, that's why they call it a mercy seat, because it's technically just covering, is the term that they use for that. So the interesting thing is that the Old Testament talks about putting the Testament into the ark, but it doesn't define what that means, right? But if you go to Hebrews, which is in the New Testament, Hebrews chapter 9, it talks about what is in the Ark of the Covenant, because it says the Ark of the Covenant contained the manna, Aaron's staff that budded, and the tablets of the covenant. And the cherubim of glory were above and overshadowing the mercy seat. It's not possible to speak about these things in detail right now, which is very interesting. I'm not sure why you would say that. Because if you read like Hebrews 9, 10, and 11, it talks a lot about the tabernacle as well. So if you're interested, you can go and look at that section there. So here are the things that are inside the ark. So we have the rod, which represents miracles and authority. We have the 10 Commandments, which represents the law and righteousness. And we have the manna, which represents God's provision. And so those are the things that God ordained to put inside the ark as a remembrance. We're to remember those things. We're to remember God's provision. We're to remember righteousness. We're to remember God's authority and the miracles that he does.
You ever wonder why this tablets and everything's left?
Right. I think it's very right, because what had happened to them? What had happened to the Israelites? What were they focused on? They were focused on the law. So the others disappeared because they were totally focused on the law, and that's all that was left is the law.
Numbers represented like them being taken care of and like
Right.
What would be the like
Well, that was a
directly?
miracle and God's authority. Yeah. Yep. But all they were left with was the commandments.
I get a look at them at the manna because the leader then looks at macaroni and cheese and cheeseburger and a pizza.
Right?
I had to go look closer. I was like,
You know, it was takeout food at the time.
It was. Yes.
yeah. It was. But I'm like,
Right. So then the mercy seat was actually a separate piece that they set on top. Right. So it was also be a pure gold, 2.5 cubits by 1.5 cubits, with hammered work, with one cherub on one end and one cherub on the other, with their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat, facing each other, and then the wings touching. And so the mercy seat then is that's where, if you read here, when Moses entered the tent of meeting to speak with the Lord, he heard the voice speaking to him from above the mercy seat that was on the Ark of the Testament. From between the two cherubs, he spoke with them that way. And it says in Exodus 25 also, there I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubs that are on the Ark of the Covenant, I will speak to you about all that I will give you in the commandment for the people of Israel. So remember, there are times when God says, no, you can't see my face, right? But Moses saw God face to face. But how did he see God face to face? Through the mercy seat, right? Without God's mercy, without God's covering, without that blood atonement on the mercy seat, Moses could not approach God. So it's through the atonement that Jesus provides, and back then it was through the atonement of the sacrificial lambs.
Say the 70 elders did the same thing, and 70 elders sat facing that dinner of God.
Well, they had to purify themselves, right? Beforehand.
Really big on cleanliness.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mean, outside of the temple and stuff. That's why the black tribes didn't really hit the Jewish community along with them being kicked out of the major areas.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. So let's see. So this is where it talks about everything being set in place. Let me see if it talks about golden altar, blah, 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 screen, place the. So when Moses set up the altar, he placed the ark first and attached the poles to the ark. And he set the mercy seat on top of the ark. And he brought the ark into the tabernacle and then put up the veil for the screen. And he screened off the ark of the testimony, just as the Lord had commanded him. And it doesn't say, even when it says he set it up, it doesn't really say what direction he put it. But he put it in there and then he covered it up. And Moses is the one that put it there. Moses is the one that put all the other pieces in place to begin with. It's interesting though, because Moses isn't the one who carried it, but Moses is the one who set it up. But there are very, very then specific instructions for moving the ark, right? So the Kohathites are the ones who are supposed to move the most holy objects. So there were different groups of the Levites, and they were all given different tasks. Some carried the tent, some carried the poles, some carried. So Kohathites are the ones who are supposed to carry the holy objects.
they all weren't evangelists.
No, they were not. They all had very specific tasks, and they were not supposed to share those tasks. They were supposed to. They weren't, the Gerahites were not supposed to do what the Kohathites were supposed to do.
Were they allowed to like marry the different sections? I know they had to keep the Levites with the Levites, but were they allowed to like? Do they have to keep it like
Within their
sections of
tribe?
the Levites too?
Did you have to marry within your tribe, right? Is that what you're asking? Yeah.
Sorry, random question.
no,
That can
that's
be
okay.
answered later.
It's okay. I don't know the answer to that question.
Because I know they weren't supposed to marry like like the Benjamins or like stuff like that.
Right.
Stuff. Like they were supposed to just be Levites and Levites.
Right.
It would just matter for the men.
Right.
The men could marry anybody within the tribe of Israel. Didn't have to marry within the Levite. Because the Levitical priesthood carried down to the male line.
Right.
They couldn't marry or form of slavery.
So when the Kohathites were to go in and take care of the ark, they were to take down the veil and then cover the ark with the veil. And so they never actually saw what they were carrying, because as they were taking down the veil, they were supposed to cover it. And then they were to put another skin over top of that.
I mean, there was that one pizza symbol that was below the.
How do you get veal on pizza?
Huh?
How do you get veal on pizza?
I don't know.
You look at a pizza.
Oh,
Yeah. And it says they were not to touch the holy objects or they would die. That says in Numbers 4:15.
Well, that's where the lost tribe comes in. If they touch the holy thing, that just bites. The just bites.
No. I don't know what he's talking about.
They died.
the Jesuits
Into
did?
that. No, the just bites. That just bite.
I mean, I get it, but I thought you were playing off the Jesuits, and I'm like, I didn't have the Jesuits carry it. That's confusing.
Right. Yes.
Vegemite?
So, no. It's not the Mediaites either.
Jebusites.
Right.
That's like the Jebusites.
Okay. Yes. So here's another Leviticus 16 where it says, Lord spoke to Moses after the death of Aaron's two sons when they approached the presence of the Lord and died. And that's because they brought unholy fire before the Lord, that they may never come into the holy place behind the veil in front of the mercy seat on the ark, or else they will die, because he appears in the cloud. And so here are your different arks. In yes, there's Noah's ark, there's Moses's ark, talking about the little basket that Moses was in as a baby. And then there's Ark of the Covenant, and then there's the Jews currently put what they call the Torah in the ark, in an ark. They call it an ark. The Torah. No, what they put the Torah in, they call an ark.
Ark just means box.
Yes, it means box. Yep. So, as I mentioned before, the law was inside the box, and it was the mercy seat on top of it that covered the law, where the blood is applied, that allows us to enter the presence of God.
I wonder how they clean that up.
Yeah, I have.
I mean, after years and years and years, that's
Right? There'd be a lot
a
of.
lot of buildup.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or unless it's all burned up. But so this is talking about the Day of Atonement, as I mentioned before, about how he's supposed to bring in incense, and he's supposed to bring in some of the blood to sprinkle on the mercy seat. And he sprinkles it with his fingers 7 times before the mercy seat. And if he didn't bring in the coals with him, then he wouldn't be able to see anything. But this is a rendition of the way that some people think the ark was, and that the poles went that way, which then provides like a little walkway for him. Now, sort of. Now there's another thing I didn't mention, but there are some people some scientists who have speculated that. Oh, well, I'll talk about it in a minute when I get here. Because it makes sense for me to say it then. All right, so talking about other times when we talk about the ark, right? The ark represented their victory, God going with them. Joshua carried the ark before him. He's starting right when they crossed the Jordan. And there it says, great camp and follow the ark. Keep a distance about 1,000 yards between yourselves and the ark. Don't go near it so that you can see the way to go, which is interesting to me. So if you were too close to the ark, you wouldn't be able to see the way to go. Too bright. The cloud covered it so much you can't see where you're going. I don't know. It doesn't say, but being too close would mean you wouldn't see the way to go.
The ark was quite large, wasn't it?
No, it's actually quite small. It's like 5 feet.
I'll try that.
Yeah. Right. It's about that size. It's not that big. Because a cubit is like this long. Like, actually, it's like this long. If you go with the royal cubit from here to the top of my second hand, that's about how long. And it's only 3.5 cubits long.
When you have a long elbow.
I do.
Must be the gold and the brightness of sun.
Well, God went with them, and God stayed over the ark. So the cloud by day and the fire by night. I thought that was very interesting,
That
though.
is a job that I would not want to be the measurement. You know what I mean?
Right?
Bring the measurement guy over here.
Yes.
Did you ever find out if his name was Kubrick?
Yeah, stupid.
Right. Yeah.
Supper. That would be-
Yeah. So here's another reference that if you think about this, I didn't make that association, but Samuel, right? Before the lamp of the Lord had gone out, Samuel was lying down in the tabernacle of the Lord where the ark of God was located. So Samuel was right there by the ark when he heard God talking to him.
Probably on the other side.
Presumably on the other side of the curtain, but right there, right next to, because that's where the lampstand is, right there next to where the ark was when God talked to him. Yes, that is interesting. And then, of course, we have David and the Philistines. So the Philistines took the ark when God, huh?
That's
Right before Saul was appointed king is when the Philistines took the ark. And when the Philistines brought the ark back, they brought the ark back by putting it in a new cart that had never been yoked and pulled by 2 cows that had never been yoked and sent it on its way. Right? So Philistines sent the ark back in a cart. David, when David was going to take the ark up to Jerusalem, did he do it the way God said to do it? Carried it by the priests?
nice.
No. He did it the way the Philistines did it. Right, without the hemorrhoids and the rats. And so when the cart jolted,
I'm still stuck on hemorrhoids and rats.
oh, that's when the Philistines sent them back. See, the plagues that God sent to them were hemorrhoids and rats. And when the Philistines sent
Right.
back the ark, they made gold hemorrhoids and gold rats to put with the ark as an offering.
Oh,
Sorry.
Hemorrhoids served as the model.
I don't know.
I'm just like, I'm
But
like,
that's
okay,
true.
guys, like, what?
Yep. That is true. You never know what you're going to find in the Bible, but that is absolutely true. Yep. So David did not do it God's way. He did it the Gentile way, the worldly way. And then Uzzah. Now Uzzah Uzzah was of the right tribe, he should have known the way to carry the ark. He was not carrying the ark the way he was told to carry the ark. Now,
Or was he told? Do we know that he was told? That's
What-
what I've always wondered. Did we know that he was told?
well, if he was a priest, Uzzah was one of the people who were given the charge to care for the ark.
Comply.
So I would assume that he would know, because he was of that tribe and they should have passed it down, what is the proper way to care for the elements of God, right?
Well,
And it's in the Torah.
Even when David brought the ark to the city, he was speaking to his right.
Right.
What did he do? He did carry it on poles, but he didn't cover it.
Right.
You were supposed to carry the ark out for everybody to look at.
Right? It was supposed to be
This
covered,
isn't a spectacle.
right? Yep, it's supposed to be covered. So interesting. This is an aside. It's not anything confirmed, but it's speculation by some scientists that the reason that Uzzah was struck dead was that if the ark was a box, a gold box, and if there was another gold box inside, it could become a capacitor, build up electricity, and thereby when he touched it, he grounded it and it killed him.
The original ark called breaker.
And so, you know,
The ark ever properly carried after they were moved into the pit.
we don't know,
How do we know it was never carried in a covered manner?
because they put it in the temple and then we don't know where it went. But anyway, so those are some of the interesting facts about the ark. Now there's there's information about the anointing oil. If you're interested, the details about that, they had special anointing oil for all the priests and things like that. So that was my Bible study for tonight on the menorah and